and welcome back in this third part of Indigo, written by Fischer. I hope till now everyone is aware that what is there in the lesson. After watching these two videos, I don't think that there is any who will ask about Indigo, that what is Indigo. Why Mahatma Gandhi asked the departure of British from the India. So why Rajkumar Shukla met with Mr. Gandhi? Why Mahatma Gandhi gave his consent to accompany to the champaran? What was sharecropping system? Why they went to Rajendra Prasad's house? Why Rajendra Prasad's servant took him another peasant? Why Mahatma Gandhi and Rajkumar Shukla wanted to collect more information about the condition of sharecroppers and why he made Malkani's house as headquarters of investigation, why he tried his lawyer friend for representing petty cases in the court where the poor are crushed, and chiding them and scolding the lawyers for charging the fee. Because here Gandhi said that real relief to the farmer and the poor is to make them free from fear. And I don't think that you will ask me that why Gandhiji took the words of visited Britishers to refund only 25%. Why it was important for Mahatma Gandhi to surrender their prestige along with the 25% refund of that amount that they have extorted from the peasants, right? And I don't think that you will ask now that after winning that battle, that Gandhiji has done some more improvement, social, cultural, economic reform there in Champaran's villages. Sanitation के लिए उन्होंने क्या काम किए, एजुकेशन के लिए उन्हें अपने बहुत सारे फॉलोअर्स को बुलाया, इवन अपने वाइफ को भी बुलाया, so that she could teach some lesson of sanitations to the village women and other followers like doctors, education के लिए teachers बुलाए, right? These were things that Mahatma Gandhi taught the people. Gandhiji taught the lesson of self-reliance, and he said that we should not seek any kind of proof in other persons, the way his lawyer friend said that, and you should be here with us. He was seeking some proof, he was seeking some advantage in Andrew. Andrew was Gandhiji's follower. So Gandhiji said, no, it shows the bigness of your mind, your heart. If you make up your mind, if you're determined, and if you really want to win, so in this world, there is nothing that can stop you to win and to get that you want. That's it, dear students. This was just the introduction that I was just refreshing your mind that what have you seen in previous two videos. So here, there are some long questions which is really very much helpful. So stay with me to the end of this video.
Why do you think Gandhi considered the Champaran episode to be a turning point in his life? Champaran episode was a turning point in Gandhi's life. He explained that what he did was a very ordinary things, but it was a successful beginning of a mass movement. He declared that the British could not order him in his own country. Civil disobedience has won the first time in modern India. This movement was aimed at rendering humanitarian and national service. He did it in his own manner. He did not compromise with his principle. He generated confidence in common folk that they could stand on their own. It was the practical lesson of self-reliance. The independence movement became a mass movement and Champaran episode sowed its seed. It is because of this episode that Gandhi come to know the ground realities and real problems of the people, and this episode proved to be a turning point in his life because initially he has taken it a very casual and has taken it very easy to deal with, but it takes almost a year of his life later on. How did Gandhi help the poor in Champaran to achieve freedom from fear? Rajkumar Shukla met Gandhiji during annual convention of the Congress Party in Lucknow, and he was one of the sharecropper who were the victim of the landlord system in Champaran. And he had come to the session to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar. So Gandhiji went to Champaran to know the facts, and the first of all, he met the secretary of the British Landlord Associations, who told Gandhi that he cannot give informations to an outsider. And afterward, he met with the British official commissioner of Thiru division, who bullied Gandhiji to advise Gandhi to leave there at once. And Gandhi did not leave. Instead, he went to Motihari. The several lawyers accompanied him. The people greeted him. The Gandhi decided to go on to a nearby village where a peasant had been maltreated. And he was stopped by a messenger of the police superintendent, and he was served with a notice to leave Champaran. Gandhi signed a receipt for the notice and wrote on it that he would not obey the order. As a result, Gandhi received a summons to appear in court that very next day. The peasants in large number gathered around the court. It was a spontaneous demonstration, and it was the beginning of the people's liberation from the fear of the British. And it was with Gandhi's cooperation that they could regulate the crowd. And Gandhi was giving a proof, concrete proof to the Britishers that Indian could challenge their might. All right. There was a fear of Gandhi being sent to prison. The lawyers would go back if Gandhi was sent to prison, but soon they realized to desert the cause of the sharecroppers. They assured Gandhi that they would give court arrest if it so happened. Then Gandhi said, "The Battle of Champaran is won." Thus, it was a triumph of civil disobedience. How do we know that ordinary people too contributed to the freedom movement? This chapter, Indigo, presents the story initiated by an ordinary peasant and farmer Rajkumar Shukla. And he was one of the sharecroppers in Champaran. The sharecroppers were victims of British landlords. The landlords compelled the tenants to plant 15% of their holding with indigo. They had to surrender the entire indigo harvest as rent. They took help of Gandhi ji. He had to wait for a long time for his first meeting with Gandhiji, and Gandhi was pleased with his tenacity and endurance. He went to Patna and then to Champaran to know about the grievances of the peasant. He fought for their legitimate rights, and the Champaran Satyagraha became a mass movement as so many lawyers and leaders joined Gandhiji. The real heroes of the movement were Rajkumar Shukla and his fellow farmers. So the Gandhi aroused in them the feeling of self-reliance. Champaran Satyagraha was a turning point in the history of freedom movement because ordinary people contributed to make this movement a success. What did the peasant pay the British landlord as rent, and what did the British now want and why, and what would be the impact of the synthetic indigo on the prices of the natural indigo? This is really very important question of this lesson. Most of the arable land in the Champaran district was divided into large estates. They were owned by Englishmen, and Indian peasants worked on them. The peasants were compelled to plant indigo on 15% of their holding, and they had to pay the entire indigo harvest to the British landlords. This agreement was very much exploitative in nature, and presently the landlord learned that Germany had developed synthetic indigo. Now the landlord thought that this crop would not be profitable. They obtained agreement from sharecroppers to pay them compensation for being released from the 15% arrangement. The impact of synthetic indigo would be on the production and export of natural indigo. Naturally, the demand of the natural indigo would go down. The events in this part of the text illustrated Gandhiji's method of working. Can you identify some instances of this method and link them to his idea of satyagraha and non-violence? Now, every one of us knows that Gandhiji challenged the mighty British Empire on which the sun never set. He had deep faith in truth and non-violence. He struggled for peace and brotherhood throughout his life. Satyagraha and non-violence were his trusted arms. The events in this part of the text illustrated his method of working. He always insisted on truth through non-violent approach. When Gandhiji went to Motihari, the capital of Champaran, the several lawyers accompanied him. The police superintendent's messengers ordered him to return. He complied. Right? The Gandhi was served an official notice to quit Champaran. Gandhiji signed the receipt for the notice and wrote on it that he would disobey the order. He then received someone to appear in the court the next day. The peasants of Motihari came to know of this, and they assembled in thousands to demonstrate around the court. and he helped the police in regulating the crowd. The Gandhiji cooperated with them, and his behavior was polite and friendly, not of revenge. Right? The magistrate finally dropped the case, and in another event, Rajendra Prasad, Brij Kishore, and other lawyers from Bihar conferred with Gandhi, and Gandhi asked them what they would do if he was sentenced to prison. They replied that they would go home, but when Gandhi asked them about the injustice to the sharecroppers, they withdrew to consult, and then they told Gandhiji that they were ready to follow him into the jail. It was because of his insistence of truth or satyagraha to stay in Champaran. What was the attitude of the average Indian in smaller localities toward advocates of home rule? See, the attitude of the average Indian in smaller localities toward advocates of home rule was one of the indifference, and they were afraid to show sympathy for them. But exceptions were also there, and exceptions don't make the rule. And Professor J.B. Kriplani of the Art College in Muzaffarpur in Bihar and Professor Malkani were such exceptions. Gandhiji had met Kriplani at Tagore's Shantiniketan school, and he received Gandhiji with a large body of students on the station at midnight on 15th April 1917 when Gandhiji went there. There, Gandhiji stayed for 2 days in the home of Professor Malkani, the government school teacher, and it was an extraordinary thing in those days to harbor and to give shelter a man like Gandhiji. Before the advent of Gandhiji, the people were disorganized and they paid no attention to people like Gandhiji. But peasants were miserable. They were crushed and exploited by the English landlords, and the Gandhiji's coming on to the stage changed the whole situation, and the movement for home rule became a mass movement, culminating into the freedom of the country. How was Gandhi able to influence laws, give instances? Gandhiji was a man with a difference, and he never preached anything that he did not practice himself. He was able to influence laws because of his attitude, care, and love for poor people. He always set examples before others. In one of such instances, he was ready to go to jail for the poor peasant. Although he was unknown to them, yet he was ready to die for them. His patriotic attitude influenced the laws, and they were ready to go to jail with Gandhi. Last one is here. How did the episode change the plight of the peasants? This episode brought an end to the long-term contract of the landlords with the peasants. It changed the plight of the peasants by letting the British planters abandon their estate within a few years. Now the land was back with the peasants, and the indigo sharecropping disappeared. Moreover, this episode affected their psychology. They regained their courage and confidence. They realized that they must claim their rights.